Hey doing guys, I have what I think is a cool idea, so pull up a chair at the table with this idea and we'll share it together. How many of you have heard this? There's brothers and sisters in Christ in your life that are warning you, vetting you, cautioning you about other Christians that support Donald Trump, and that there's this deep disease that's running through evangelical Christianity specifically. Mainly that's what they're speaking of. And this loyalty to Donald Trump is an end game, a catastrophic event, at the very least, like a disease in the churches, in the congregations, in our priorities and how we view the world, and that the totem pole has been shifted because of Donald Trump and words like cult of personality and all this different stuff. And I want to say something on the front end to be intellectually honest. I don't think that all of this is empty of calories. I don't. I think, like all things, there's people in my life where this is true of. I think that there are people who have gone a little too far, have put faith, flirted with deification and all this different stuff. I think that's true. In my personal life, that's very rare, but I think that is true. So to be honest, I think the premise can be learned from, and I encourage people to do that. I'm not dismissing it entirely. But one of the things I'm concerned about is that there's a ton of voices for this, right? There's a lot of noise out there. Trump bad, don't listen to Trump, Trump's not good, all that kind of stuff. It's not as though if there was a scale, that scale isn't very heavy with representation. What I fear is that the other side of the story is never told, and in my opinion, is the lion's share of the problem, and that's the case I want to make for you. What I think is actually happening is many of these Christians prefer to arrange the world in a certain way, and oftentimes that leans left. And instead of just being honest about that, instead of just saying that, they dress it up in Christianese, in the authority of faith talk, in the authority of refining the greater church. This keeps their hands clean from the petty bickering of politics. And make no mistake, everybody who engages in this filth, that's what it is. Your hands are dirty because it's not a kingdom way. It's not the best way. But rather than having all cards on the table, they do this, what I consider to be very manipulative thing. And instead of just saying, hey, I don't prefer these politics, I don't prefer this arrangement of the world, they say, no. Donald Trump, any kind of support for Donald Trump is this, needle of poison in the arm to your faith. I find that to be manipulative in a tradition that I grew up with, which is, this 3-card Monty thing that Christians often do with each other. There's a lot of room in Christianity for disagreeing on how to allocate resources and seek justice and all these different things. That de facto does not make a person good or bad. However, what I think has happened to many of these fellow Christians that are giving this reprimand is in their own hearts, they have allowed a deep hatred, a disdain, and all these things to creep in specifically about the man of Donald Trump. And then they'll go to other Christians that say like Donald Trump's policies or something like that, and they'll start reprimanding them because how could a fellow Christian like a man who say is Hitler? I mean, that's just a regular term used, and they don't realize that that's extremely hyperbolic, and you really shouldn't unload the gun of the English language without there being justification, or you won't have bullets later, right? Nazi, right? So the thing here is, this is the thinking. If you've allowed your heart to become so darkened in regards to how you feel about this man, and only you know if it has, I don't know, but I certainly have met a lot of Christians in the last 4 years who have allowed themselves to go into those doldrums and deep into them. And actually, what is happening to their heart is the real concern for Christianity. This is the real concern because their heart is just rotting out with their visceral dislike of this man. And I think this is extremely important because what I think is happening here is a lot of projection. So they'll go to their mother, they'll go to their aunt, they'll go to their brother and sister in Christ in any way, shape, or form. And they'll say, how do you support Hitler? How do you support, pick your hyperbolic term. There is no voice vetting that, which is the reason for this video, There is no pushback to that because the vast majority of the narratives in our modern society are going to validate that. And so what I think has happened is they've reconstructed an entire morality, and then they're hoisting that morality on their brother and sister in Christ and saying, how come you're not abiding by this morality? It's not traditional morality. It's just this thing that has come from their disdain of Donald Trump. As irony would have it, I think that's where the lion's share of vetting belongs. And their disdain for Trump has allowed them to drift by way of what they support in a very practical way. What they're aligning with, the ideologies they're aligning with, the actual ideas they're aligning with. If you have a plug and you just stick it into the I hate Trump outlet, you're going to drift pretty far. You want to hear the things that tickle your ear. You want to be around like-minded people. You plug that into an outlet like the world, which I've seen many Christians in my life doing, and what they slowly start to soften to. Prior to Trump, they never would have entertained these things because they're just on their face, not good things. But this is what I think happens. If Trump says a thing, Trump might say something like, the sky is blue. They immediately, because of a deep visceral hatred for this man, they'll say the sky is red. And you can see the compound interest on this, right? So if Trump stands for a thing or does not stand for a thing, that doesn't in and of itself make a thing good or bad, unless you have a disdain for Donald Trump, then it has to be bad. And I've seen that happen more and more and more with Christians. And the only reason for this video is there's no refinement on that. There's no pushback on that. There's plenty, be weary of Trump, do not make a cult of personality about Trump. I don't even disagree with that. Thus the video. Also, there's this dishonesty about it because the timing is weird. Very clearly remember a lot of people turning Barack Obama into a little bit of a soft deity. I remember songs and chants and all these different things. And I'm not making much ado about that. I'm just saying, strangely enough, the same voices were not crying in the wilderness with prophet-like urgency about how this is detrimental to Christendom. And I'll tell you why. It's very clear why. They preferred the politics of Barack Obama, so the urgency wasn't upon them. They didn't hate him, but they're making this huge thing out of something that is not huge. They themselves do not prefer to arrange the world that way. That's fine. That's not the problem. The problem is when that becomes this chicken's little sky is falling scenario in your minds, and really that's all just engined from your own disdain for an individual, for a human being, for a child of God. That's actually what I think is engineering a lot of this. And then oftentimes what they'll do is they'll use their spiritual capital. They'll use their spiritual influence. They'll use the credibility that they have as Christian brothers and sisters in Christ, not to refine each other in the fruits of the Spirit and evidenced things in the lives of Christians around them, but rather to manipulate people politically. That's about it in a nutshell. Thanks for listening, guys. Take it easy.